And tonight, Democrats and the media mob, once again, they are in their typical psychotic state of mania and hysteria, all because President Trump dared to consult with his doctors, make his choice. I thought we were pro-choice. Talk to his healthcare professionals and take hydroxychloroquine as a preventative measure against COVID-19. We're going to show you the worst of the worst. And by the way, we will help educate Dr. Joyless Behar, Dr. Liberal Joe, and all the other psycho conspiracy theorists over at MSDNC. But now it is day 65 of Joe Biden hiding in his own basement, mumbling incoherent thoughts on his disastrous podcast. So the question is, will Joe ever brave the real world again? Hi, Joe. How are you? Joe, doing podcasts, forgetting he's on camera. You know, that guy. Anyway, we'll have a full report tonight. But our top story, what did Barack know? What did Joe know? And when did they know it? Because on January 20th, 2017, Donald Trump was being inaugurated as the 45th president of the United States. On the very same day, in the final hours of the Obama administration, Susan Rice, remember her? She was the White House, in the White House, crafting an email from Susan Rice to Susan Rice herself. In a very unusual letter, Rice was memorializing a meeting that took place 15 days earlier when her former boss, Barack, gathered all of his top intel law enforcement officials together in the Oval Office. In that meeting, Brennan, Clapper, Comey, Biden, Yates, Rice, all there, all present in the Oval Office, and they were discussing a Russian collusion in the 2016 election. Too bad they didn't know about and talk about Hillary Clinton's bought and paid for Russian disinformation dossier that was used, the real Russia interference. And according to Rice's email, quote, President Obama began the conversation by stressing his continued commitment to ensuring that every aspect of this issue is handled by the intelligence and law enforcement communities. By the book. Okay, she continued. He reiterated, our law enforcement team needs to proceed as it normally would, by the book. And in a paragraph just declassified by acting DNI Director Rick Grinnell, Susan Rice wrote, quote, Director Comey affirmed that he is proceeding by the book. Now, why would Susan Rice, well, we know what a pathological liar she is, why did she feel the need to write by the book 3 times on the last day they're in the White House in relation to a 15-day-old meeting? Why did she do it on the final day? Oh, let me go back. I forgot to memorialize that meeting from 15 days ago. Now, according to the same email, Rice wrote that Comey had no indication that incoming Security Advisor General Flynn had passed on any classified material to his future Russian counterpart. As a matter of fact, we now know that they had no evidence at all as of January 4th. It was Strzok and Comey that reopened it. But by the way, the level of communication, Comey said, was unusual. In reality, what was particularly unusual was Comey's aggressive persecution of General Flynn. Now, after that so-called by-the-book meeting, Obama pulled Sally Yates and James Comey aside. Why? To discuss Flynn. Now, according to the recently released testimony from Sally Yates, this is from the House Intel Committee that the corrupt, congenital, cowardly, Adam Schiff was hiding, a former deputy AG. She admits she was shocked to learn on January 5th that Barack Hussein Obama, the president, had intimate details of Flynn's wiretap phone calls. Does that seem by the book to you? What about FBI leadership demanding that the Flynn case be reopened just the day before January 4th, 2020, after its investigation found no evidence of wrongdoing? One other fact about January 5th, the chief of staff of Barack Obama, that guy was unmasking Flynn, Dennis McDonough. Coincidence? And 8 days before they left the Oval Office and Donald Trump was inaugurated, then Joe Biden, who said on day 1 of this last week he didn't know anything about unmasking, we found out he was one of the unmaskers. What about Comey sending the agents, as he admits and brags about on tape, to ambush General Flynn, a 33-year veteran, 4 days into the Trump administration, something he'd never do or get away with in any other administration? And what about before meeting with those FBI agents? Well, General Flynn called Andrew McCabe, deputy FBI guy, and asked him, do I need my lawyer? And what about the agent who asked, quote, what is our goal with General Flynn? Is it get him to tell the truth, an admission, or to get him to lie so we can prosecute him or get him fired? Is that policy by the book for the FBI? Get somebody to lie, set a perjury trap, ambush a 33-year veteran, tell him he doesn't need an attorney when he damn well needed one? Yeah, none of that's by the book. What about the text from Lisa Page? President Obama wants to know everything that we're doing. They want to be kept abreast of this. The White House does. What about Strzok's insurance policy in the unlikely event that Donald Trump wins? Now, FBI Director Wray, are you comfortable with any of this? Are you? Because will you ever hold anyone accountable? Do you, Director Wray, care about what is an abuse of power and corruption that took place at the world's premier law enforcement agency, the one of which you are now the director? In other words, Director Wray, are you going to do anything to restore the reputation of this, the world's premier law enforcement institution, or are you going to sweep it under the rug, be an institutionalist, be afraid to rock the boat, and maybe you even want to protect your friends and you don't want to go there? Well, for the sake of the 99% of great agents, by the way, it's my FBI pin right there, maybe you should do the right thing for the country, for the rule of law, for the Justice Department, for the FBI, and get to the bottom of it. And if you're not up to the job, maybe you should tell President Trump, I'm just not up to this job. I don't want to do the heavy lifting here. And maybe we can make General Flynn the new director of the FBI. Now, to add insult to injury, the judge presiding over Flynn's case is Judge Emmett Sullivan. Now, he did a great job in Ted Stevens' case. I don't know what's gotten into him. He seems pretty well determined, though, to drag the general through the mud all over again, to once pretty much accusing him of treason, and despite both the prosecution and the defense agreeing to drop all the charges and end this case, Judge Sullivan has now invited liberal groups to submit their amicus briefs, and argue in favor of continuing Flynn's persecution. Now, breaking today, Flynn attorney Sidney Powell, she fired what is an emergency appeal to remove Judge Sullivan from this case. He needs to go. She's rightly arguing the judge is abusing his power, particularly since the judge previously accused Flynn of being a traitor to the U.S. Nice way to treat people. Now, sadly, tonight, what happened to General Flynn, as horrible as it is, that's only the tip of the iceberg. Now, Senator Lindsey Graham, following on the heels of what Devin Nunes said and what Trey Gowdy said, Senator Lindsey Graham is now demanding unmasking records surrounding members of the Trump campaign, the Trump White House, and yes, even the president's family, as Trey Gowdy and Devin Nunes have told us happened. Now, Senator Graham also just announced that the Senate Judiciary Committee, they will begin their hearings on June the 3rd on whether or not to subpoena Comey. Well, they said they would subpoena Comey, McCabe, Strzok, Page, Loretta Lynch, Sally Yates, Brennan, Clapper, Rice, Rod Rosenstein, and many others. So buckle up, all of you deep state saboteurs that are there. This will be summer camp with your lawyers. You're going to have to spend a lot of time with them in air-conditioned offices. Hope you like a lot of coffee. Now, soon the corrupt bureaucrats who waged a months-long counter-intel campaign against the Trump campaign, then the Trump transition team, then 2 years of the Trump presidency, they will likely be forced to answer questions under oath. Remember, by the way, lying under oath is a very serious crime. They're the ones that tell us that. And by the way, all those that abuse power, you must be held accountable. If Roger Stone, let's see, Paul Manafort, Michael Cohen, Papadopoulos, and General Flynn, they're all going to get set up and, hung out to dry on lying to Congress, and they get 29 guys in tactical gear raiding their house, pre-dawn raids with CNN cameras. In one case, no CNN cameras in the other. Then you deserve the same treatment. And while Graham, Barr, Durham, and so many others focus on the biggest abuse of power scandal in history, Democrats are just trying to revive their impeachment quest. Now, they just told the U.S. Supreme Court that they needed the full unredacted Mueller report. Why? Because their impeachment investigation is still underway. Hang on a second. I thought that the House did the impeachment, the Senate held the trial, and the president was found not guilty by a long shot. So they're trying to argue to the U.S. Supreme Court that that impeachment is still ongoing. Okay, it's over. But they're also signaling they want to never stop impeachments. Mark my words, the witch hunt will never stop. And by the way, in 178 days, you get to decide.